Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of NextGen in Bharat. Today I have the amazing Neiharika Rajiv with me, and she's the co-founder of GI Ventures and also the voice behind the podcast, The Bharat Conversation. Today we're going to be discussing everything about startups, business, policies by the government that support startups, basically everything revolving around the beautiful, hustling, dynamic landscape of startups in Bharat. Keep watching. Hi. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
That's great. So I wanted to know why the Bharat Conversation. How did you think of this, having this podcast where everyone's talking about startups? It's great because there's this startup wave in India now, and it's very informative for anyone who wants to do business or startup.
Thank you so much. So the Bharat Conversation, the whole idea was that the conversations that we're having in Tier 1 India, the big cities or so-called centers of startup, Bangalore, Delhi, Bombay, the conversations there, how can we get that same information down all the way to all the tiers of India, right? So if someone's building from a Gorakhpur, you're building from Shillong, you're building from, Coorg, even, you're just sitting there and building from there, you should be able to have access to the same information. And who better to give the information than the folks who have gone through the journey themselves?
Of course.
To us, while, Bharat, that is India, is how we see it. So the rest of India outside of those top 7 cities, let's get them to come back and, be at the same pace as everybody else for the startup wave.
And, the word Bharat, when anyone adds it, I feel there's just so much of strength and power to it.
Yeah.
So you could have added India, but why Bharat?
One, I'll be very honest, it's emotional. So when I think of myself, as much as I'd like to think of myself Indian, Bharat is what comes first. You think of Bharat Mata,
yes.
Right? So for me, I do consider myself a patriot, and this was my way of giving back in whatever way I could. So the identity for me is Bharat. India is, I think, the way the West sees us, a certain section, the Tier 1 demographic that is there, that is not representative of the entire country. So when I wanted it to be, more extensively representative, I thought Bharat would be the right way to go.
It's a very powerful word, I feel.
Yeah, thank you.
So how did you start with this journey of GI Ventures? What was your experience? The idea kab aaya?
Yeah. So I have been angel investing. तब हमें पता नहीं था कि angel investing कोई terminology होती है. Back in 2014 when we started investing, it was just a different asset class. Startup investments generally are a more diversified or risky asset class. जैसे आप FDs में तो सब पैसा डालते ही हैं, typically India में वहाँ पे डाला जाता है. The other safe spot is gold. Now I would say the younger generation is testing out equity markets through mutual funds.
Yes.
Right? Also direct equity, which has grown substantially over the last few years. And then of course real estate. But startups as an asset class is a little what I would call illiquid. आप उसमें से कभी भी नहीं निकल सकते, right? जब आप पैसा डालते हैं, जैसे रियल एस्टेट में भी कई बार टाइम पीरियड लगता है आपको पैसा डाइल्यूट करने में. when you want to decide, if you decide today I want to get rid of this or I want to dilute or divest out of a real estate asset, it takes time. Similarly, startups is an asset class in which you have to be very patient, because आप जब निकलना चाहेंगे ज़रूरी नहीं है आपकी will and beck and call पे आप निकल सकते हैं. But the beauty about the asset class is the growth potential, right? People, you hear multiples of 60x, 150x, 300x, and honestly, the sky is the limit. But it is also a risky asset class.
Yes.
So 2014, when I was in the States at the time, Uber and Lyft had just started out. Right? So that was yeah. So it was back then. It was back then. It was a whole different, it's a decade back then. But that's when I realized that, hey, this is an asset class. Even Google was a startup, but तब हमें पता नहीं था. मैंने देखना शुरू किया कि इस asset class में बात हो रही है. I was in business school, I started reading up, and that's when I started investing. My first investment was in India with a group of engineers right out of Delhi College of Engineering at the time, जिसको हम बोलते थे. I think now it's called NIT.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you're pretty young.
I was, they were pretty young. I wasn't that young. But the funny story is, my first investment was for my son actually. So when he was born 9 years back, that is when I said instead of putting my money in an FD, because if you look at इन्फ्लेशन राइट, इंडिया में 5 to 7% के बीच में ज़्यादातर इन्फ्लेशन होता है.
हाँ जी.
अगर आपका एफडी भी आपको उसी के आसपास दे रहा है या 1-2% इधर उधर, तो एक्चुअली आपकी वैल्यू तो इरोड हो रही है, बिकॉज योर नेट वैल्यू इज गोइंग टू बी एफडी इन्फ्लेशन हटाने के बाद आप इस पे कितनी ग्रोथ हो रही है. So that actually means if you're getting 9% hypothetically and inflation is at 7, what you're actually getting is just 2% off of that FD. What is 2%? It's nothing, right?
Yeah.
So then I said, okay, chalo, I'm young, and so instead of putting my money for him in an FD, let me put it in a different asset class, which was of course very risky, but the idea was कि अगर कुछ नहीं होगा तो I am still making money and I'll figure it out. And that was my first experience, and it was a great experience. And so then on, the angel investing journey continued. GI came to be in the last year because the last 2 years I've worked a lot with startups in tier 2, tier 3 India. So the same thing, with the Bharat conversation, right? So I feel amazing founders in India, amazing ideas, and amazing ideas that are built for Bharat, from Bharat.
I love that.
Yeah. So जब उनके साथ काम करने का मन किया तो फिर कहा कि ठीक है, let's create a platform wherein we can help these founders build something which can be as par or at par with someone building in New York or in San Francisco, and why not, right? Because the creativity is there, the hustle is there. I think jugaad and hustle I really feel Indians have created jugaad. It's called hustle. That's the new Western word for it. But and that's there. The only thing sometimes that's coming in our way is information asymmetry. पैसे कहाँ से raise करें, किससे जाके बात करें, अगर आपके लिए ये रोज की conversation नहीं है. If you're building, again, I'll just give an example. My family is from Moradabad. So if you're building from Moradabad, typically this is not something you would not know किससे जाके बात करूँ. मेरा idea तो अच्छा है.
Yeah.
But
the information is not there. You need a platform for that. You need someone to give you that.
Absolutely. And so that's when we sort of said, let's connect the dots, and that's how GI Ventures started.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
But talking about hustling, I remember I was watching this video where this founder said that in India, even like the business or startup, the entire population, whoever is doing it, they don't struggle, they hustle, which you call jugaad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what you're saying now, I can like connect it, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. Because I've seen my friends and all, everyone just wants to do something, right. Like, however it is. But that's very nice. But also talking about startups, where do you think the startup ecosystem in India is going? Because now you have fintech, agritech, edutech, then you have also a lot of these sustainable and impact-driven, like startups like Jiva Jewelry. Right. So what's the next big thing that everyone should keep their eyes on in startup?
That's a $1 billion question. Because one is trying to suss out any sector is very difficult, because what I'll say is in venture capital, right, which is in the startup ecosystem, typically there's a flavor of the season, or there is a cycle that happens. So you would have seen 5 years back, EdTech was very, very big, right? Then there was a space when D2C became very big. There were so many brands, consumerism was probably at its high. Interestingly enough, when COVID, right, when we had nothing to do, we were all testing out products, and we saw this D2C wave go very high. But then the basic, and now, AI, and then crypto, and then now AI. But what I will say is the base doesn't change. So you talked about Agritech. I still feel Agritech hasn't been explored the way it should in India, because at the end of it, a certain large percentage of our population still is in that space. So from a volume perspective, it makes a lot of sense. From a consumption perspective also, now you've started seeing people are more particular about the way where they're sourcing from, what kind of food they're eating. So I would say all of that, but I would say health and wellness probably is one of the best set of sectors. Sectors which will continue to grow. It may have subsectors which will be different, but generally as a population across the world, and especially in India as well, wellness has become very important to all of us. I feel that's important. The second is going to be manufacturing. I feel that's going to be a big category in India, considering the world looking at India as a manufacturing hub and capability center, and the Make in India initiative.
Yes.
And I think those two. Also, I think the third one for me, I feel very passionately about is regional identities. So I feel like now there's been a resurgence of what I will say regional identity, especially from an entertainment perspective. I'll give you a couple of examples. Like, it's very anecdotal, but it is indicative in my mind of the wave that is happening. You know, the last maybe 6 months you would have seen jo songs viral hue. There was a Gulabi Sari, which is a Marathi song.
The Marathi song, yeah.
Right. And then now there is this Rajasthani song, Main Tere Pair Ki Juti Na. Like, you know,
yes.
So you see, I think till about a couple of years back, barring certain, cultures such as, of course, Punjabi culture, you had not seen in the north this resurgence of regional identity. This is also indicative of the confidence people have now being Indian, Bharatiya, and then now also saying I'm owning this identity. So a lot of stuff I feel can happen at a regional level. And there are startups such as Stage OTT. They do a lovely job of, it's an on-demand platform where they produce only Haryanvi content and Rajasthani content.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's doing really well. Great revenue, solid business. So, you know, I think that's something that's going to get explored more and more. So let's see how that goes.
That's very interesting. Now next is that, supposing someone started a startup like in India, what are the main challenges there are, and what can be few policies or schemes that the government can come out with to overcome these?
Sure. So I think this question is really good, and I would say 2 years back it was even more so, because that time we did not have the policies in place. Right now DPIIT is the main place where you need to get first registered as a startup. So the first very step, if you are looking to build a startup, is get registered as a startup. Building a business is different from, like, it's like MSME registration. Startup registration एक बार जब आप करा देते हैं तो उसके बाद आपको बहुत benefits के लिए are available to you. Everything from a moratorium on taxation, certain grants. But for all of that, first you need to be a registered startup. So there is some basic paperwork for it, and it's not difficult at all. It's just good to do it straight up versus later. And I think last, if I remember, and one can go check, is that about till 7 years from the time that you're registered as a startup, you get a lot of benefits, right? So you can get startup grants and such. Now there is the central government startup grants, which are great, right? So, and उसमें भी हर डिपार्टमेंट की अलग अलग अब ग्रांट्स होंगी. तो अगर आप बायोटेक में कुछ बना रहे हैं तो बायरैक की ग्रांट्स हैं. अगर आप एग्रीटेक में बना रहे हैं, so the agriculture department will have its own grant. Mr. Chirag Paswan recently came out, I think, saying that the food processing ministry has come out with its own startup challenge. So, keep an eye out. I think startups or just promoting entrepreneurship in India right now is at its peak. So the government support is at its maximum. In fact, each of the states also have their own mandates. For example, in UP, I think आपको stipend भी दिया जाता है अगर आप एक startup founder हैं. तो I think about more than 10,000 rupees. I think it was about 17,500 or such per month.
Oh my God.
Yeah, is given to you because a lot
That's great.
Yeah, because a lot of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs feel कि बेसिक्स ही जब आप नहीं ध्यान रख पाएंगे तो
आगे कैसे बढ़ेंगे.
तो उसके माइंड में रखते हुए उन्होंने ये ग्रांट्स बनाई हैं. So I think there's a lot. Whichever place you're in, just do your research. I think that is the very basic thing, and currently most policies are in place. The only thing, if I think, had to be added was that too much of something can also be is not always good, because I feel right now the government is so positively supportive that I do want to say this, that some people do end up taking advantage. I have seen folks who will be taking a grant from एक department, फिर दूसरा department, फिर तीसरा department,
misusing it completely,
which is misusing it, and which is not fair. So I think that sort of conscience needs to be put in place, and I'm sure the government is also working in putting those checks in place.
Yes. So even like Startup India, the initiative which is launched, I think 2016, they also provide a lot of tax benefits and all. So also when we are talking about policies, Are there any policies in any other country that you feel India should adopt in like terms of startups or business or some investment?
I'm glad you're saying investment, because there's been conversation about angel tax being taken off the table recently.
I saw that yesterday.
So
yes.
I think that's great for everyone, because that was additional taxation which was, I personally feel, not required, and that held a lot of people back from investing in this asset class. So when you're opening up the asset class, you have to be able to incentivize or make people feel comfortable about it. I feel already the government has done a great job. पहले US में जाके सब लोग इंडिया की स्टार्टअप्स 2-3 जगह अपने आप को रजिस्टर करती थी, सिंगापुर and Delaware Corp. That is the US.
I was watching this, that usually companies register in Singapore even if it's India. And why is that so?
So that was again because of taxation benefits and ease of doing business, right? So when your business was growing large enough, most people would prefer to do that. However, in Singapore at any given point in time, again, I think that's what it is, but you all can go cross-check it. You need to have a Singaporean partner. So a national needs to be a partner there in some capacity. But अभी हमने देखा था Delaware Corp, and like I said, Singapore, Delaware being in the US, that's where all the most businesses are based out of because of again taxation benefits. लेकिन अब gift city हो गई है, तो इसलिए it's great. So people are actually coming back to India, and you see there was a lot of news of large startups now coming back and then re-registering themselves as the base home here, which I think is fabulous, and I personally think that's exactly how it should be done, because instead of moving it elsewhere, unless necessarily your business needs a separate entity, it should be based out of your country, and the tax benefits should go to the country because you're making revenue.
Because also like each state I'm seeing has their own, like UP had invest in UP, and I heard apparently there's this monument there. And the government was saying if any hotel wants to open there. So that's something that you're actually using those historical monuments or something, which is great because money is then coming in India. The GDP is rising. So that's great. But also I wanted to ask you about technology. Is there any new technologies that may impact the startup ecosystem? Like you had UPI by the National Payments Corporation of India or Zerodha. Is there anything that we can look for or maybe coming?
No, that's a good question. I don't think I can foresee any such, immediately I'm not aware of any such sort of sweeping change in tech which could be changing it to that perspective. I would say that leveraging about a year and a half back when ChatGPT came out, leveraging of that platform has led to a lot of things, a lot of startups building off of that tech platform, and the acceptance of generative AI has been there. Personally though, I think not every business needs generative AI. I also don't think that, I'm just going to say this, I also don't think tech is always necessary for a business. To give an example, Mama Earth, I'm sure they have tech at the back end.
Of course.
And that's a hygiene now. So it's like saying, are you brushing your teeth every day? You will be using the basic tech that's there, but only tech-centric companies, I think that's a misnomer कि सिर्फ tech-centric ही company होनी चाहिए तभी चलेगी. It doesn't work like that. The way we consume, urban company is a services company, right?
Yes.
It took the unorganized sector, and it's one of my favorite companies because I think it completely changed the way we experience services. Something which is broken to standardize it. Of course, leveraging tech, but eventually delivering service. So I think it's just about the way you want to approach it. So think about tech as an enabler, not as just the centricity of it.
Actually, that's a very good point. Like not a lot of people make this point because everyone's like tech karo, and that's a great point. But you've had your journey as an investor and all. Looking at everything, even like you've met a lot of startup founders. What do you feel is mentorship or networking, which is more important for a person starting with their startup journey?
That's very, very good question. It's also a chicken and egg because I feel like if you're not networking, you can't meet your mentor, and typically your mentor will make you network. But if I really had to choose and you're super early stage, I would say finding the right mentor is important. But that is, I do want to say this, that try to network before you choose your mentor, because typically क्या होता है, our comfort zone is, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I just feel like sometimes our comfort zone is and building, and if you're incubated somewhere, आपने वहीं के किसी professor को अपना mentor बना लिया, which could be great from a tech perspective, but maybe that they can't give you the business perspective. So try to suss it out, who is the right mentor. So if I realize that I'm good at my tech, but hey, I don't understand business, then probably the mentor I want is someone who understands business, who can give that perspective to me. So try to get a mentor who is covering or going to help you build out things that you don't understand or you are not probably the strongest at. So that's what I would say. So really choose and pick your mentor correctly. Secondly, find people who are genuinely good people. I know this sounds like a very basic thing, but it is not, because you need your mentor or the people on your team to be people you can call whenever you have whenever you're going through trouble, and who will bat for you even without you asking. So you can suss it out by knowing who's authentic, who is genuinely interested in what you're building.
Good relationships within that.
Absolutely, and ask people. The startup ecosystem still is fairly small. It's okay to cold call, just reach out to new people. Secondly, it's also okay to ask other founders, who do you think would be a good mentor. So अगर जैसे आपने D2C brand start किया है, या आपने even SaaS का कोई brand start किया, you have a SaaS solution, talk to other SaaS players and figure out, hey, this person could have, who do you think should be who should be my mentor, what do you think I should build out, and they would most probably guide you in the right direction.
So what would you place more emphasis on mentorship?
I would say mentorship. If very early, mentorship is very important.
Okay. Okay, so now when I talk about the Indian consumer base, how do you think that really influences the success of a company like Nykaa? It's all about good prices, affordability. If I order today or like right now, I'll get it by tomorrow. So there's that ease with it.
Yeah.
How do you think that our Indian consumer base really influences, like the success of a company?
I mean, of course, whoever is your consumer base, if the what we call PMF, product market fit, if it's not there, then the solution will not do well. And Indian consumers, I think, are one of the toughest consumers to please, by the way, in terms of everything.
Yes.
Right? Our expectations are very high, and the interesting part is there are things that have developed in India which is not elsewhere. So convenience, I think, is very key to Indians. We like everything served on a platter. So Zomato, like you said, right, delivery next day. At the end of the day, it is usually, if you think about it, it's makeup. It's not a critical business use item or personal care. It's usually not critical, right? But we still would like that. We are the ones where our reports come within 6 hours. The next person will say 2 hours.
And you don't get that anywhere else.
You don't get that anywhere else. You have folks coming in who live in the US, Europe, coming back and saying, I can't believe you can order in food at 3 in the morning. Right? So again, convenience, urban company, it's convenience. So I think convenience, understanding that convenience is key to Indians is very, very important. Also understanding the fact that we have the supply with the large population to cater to it at reasonable prices. So दोनों चीजें तभी हो पा रहा है. But I think that part हम जितना समझते जाएंगे, like even when Flipkart started, right? In the US, the standard protocol is prepay. And then you get something. COD was something that was started off only in India, and because of that, this whole parallel industry of logistics has gone up, because COD करने के लिए इंसान चाहिए ना, जो जाके खड़ा होगा, पैसा लेगा. पैसे में भी cash लेना, cash management is a whole different skill. So I think, knowing your customer is very important, and knowing convenience is key to Indians is critical.
Convenience.
Yeah.
Okay. So now I was going through some data, and I saw that nowadays a lot of Indian students go for their graduation and post-graduation like you did, and come back and start their startups in India, and a lot of investment in India also.
Right.
Now this can be because of different reasons, because now everyone from China, because the Beijing stock market, now everyone's investing in India. Also, like I was watching this interview of Mr. Piyush Goyal, who's the Union Minister for Corporation and Industries, and he was saying that people are eating better, living better, and abroad also now they know that India is the emerging superpower and they should have good relations with them. So why do you think why is India the place now to do your business in? Why? I mean,
Yeah.
Of course, you have many benefits, but what is the main reason?
I think the main, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither has India been, because I really feel this is the work since almost independence that is coming to fruition now. And let's be honest, macro environmental factors in other countries are not something we can influence, but I would just say the timing is right. Having said that, I think the base or crux of everything is the genuine confidence and buoyancy in the market. People are actually are very comfortable being Indian now, right? So
Yes.
and when that shows through, right, when you understand the land of opportunities here. In fact, Satya Nadella recently said that, the CEO of Microsoft, and his father was a bureaucrat here in the country. He went to Manipal, then obviously moved and was with Microsoft throughout and grew up the ranks. By the way, Satya Nadella, I personally feel, is one of the most underrated CEOs, probably the best Indian origin CEO that there is there. He said, agar if things were, now, if I were in India, probably I would have never left India. And that's saying a lot, because
Yes.
because the confidence is there. We see the confidence in the stock market, we see the policy frameworks, and I will say दोनों चीज़ें होती है. एक basic confidence है, तभी ये सारी चीज़ें चल पा रही हैं, because ये चीज़ें हैं तभी हमारा confidence भी आ रहा है. So it's sort of feeding into each other. It's definitely the right time and place. I think Indians have also proven the fact that we are not just good workers but good entrepreneurs. अब तक ये लगता था employee Indian बहुत अच्छा है, so
Yes, because all doctors are Indians, engineers, but now you see so many startups, people doing different things, in UN you see Indians.
Yes.
So I mean, that's beautiful.
Exactly.
Now, what's been your best investment and your worst investment, and what's the learning from that what you would like to share to our viewers?
Yeah, I think and it's easier said than done, but I would say the worst investment is when you put in money basis of FOMO. So, like what ends up happening is, and without obviously naming the founder, I met someone and, she was very impressed by this founder and said, oh my God, this founder is so great, and, this happened and that happened. And I really like the person who was talking about the founder. So without doing too much of my own due diligence, I said, okay, fine, sounds like she's very excited, so I should also participate. And she talked about how this seems like a one-of-a-kind opportunity. That was how I invested, and I don't think that is the right way of investing, because I think FOMO is the absolute wrong way of investing. The best investment I have done is when I have actually worked and seen the founders for a while. So I have spent about 6 to 8 months just chatting with them, seeing what their thought process is, helping them, maybe mentoring them, and unofficial mentoring, right? Ye problem hai, let's talk. So you are able to judge the person and how passionate they are, how what is their integrity, what is their vision, and how open to feedback they are. That's when the best investment has happened for me, because then I was extremely comfortable. I went in with my eyes open, and yeah, it's been quite the success story.
So research, know their strategies basically.
Yeah, and spend time with the founders if you can.
That's actually nice, because you get a lot of learning.
Yes, for sure.
Course, like I'm getting from you today.
That's just sweet. I'm so glad that we're doing this.
Yes. Now I also wanted to ask you about, like, now the government is emphasizing on the manufacturing industry, as you said.
Yeah.
Also, like, when our first 5-year plan came, it was all about agriculture, and of course it's great, everything, because we have this, different land forms in different parts of the country, but also it took them a lot of effort to take that few percentage to the service industry. Like you said, that we need people to go there and, COD karna hai, to kaise kare? But now it's also on a lot of like green energy.
Right.
Then you have those machine-made diamonds, which is called green diamond by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So, what do you think about these industries? Are these good? Are these booming?
Yeah.
What else can you emphasize on?
So, I think renewable energy is a thing, across the world, right? I mean, anyone in Delhi or in the country would have experienced the impact of global warming. So it's not something, and maybe it's even tipped already, but we can do whatever we can do. So the mandates are there from a UN perspective, and each country also has its own mandates. The 2030 EV mandate in India, right? The transport ministry is obviously pushing it extensively. So those things won't change. EVs won't change. I think like the renewable energy sector will only grow. It just makes sense. Green diamonds is honestly on the other side, it's very interesting. I think it's a interesting sector, and I would be very honest, it was not something I thought would ever take off, because I was like, really, because in my mind it's a very aspirational thing, and so it's like trying to say luxury and mass, right? How do you bridge the gap between the two? Maybe
because there's some people who may think it's like it's not authentic or they don't connect to it, but then also you have to see that you do not exploit the ecological balance.
Yeah.
Because with the stones you take out and all, that's happening.
Right.
So I mean, it's really sad. But what else do you think will come soon?
I think what's interesting has been the space tech space in India. India has been doing really well in space tech, and honestly, it makes me extremely, extremely proud. So honestly, it was not even covered as much as it should have in international media. I think it was difficult for anyone to digest, the Western countries, that we were able to do it in the way.
They had different narratives of it,
Yeah.
that this is the first time, not realizing that...
Whatever, the quotes were there, yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. But also I was, reading this article where they said that in tier 2 cities now there are more startups than tier 1. And why is it? Is it because like it's become more crowded in the tier 1 cities? Why is that?
I think the number of new startups would be more. I don't know if the total number of startups are more, but definitely the number of new startups, because think about it, the tier 2, tier 3 cities are probably, I would say, a few years behind on the startup wave, right? So aaj se 3-4 saal pehle there was a massive boom of startups. Think about it, 5 years back startups was really not something many people talked about.
Yes.
Angel investments were things people did not know, right? What is this?
And now it's all about that.
It's all about that. Or yeah, well, let's hope it stays it's a consistent asset class that stays. But so tier 2, tier 3 is catching up, hence I think that's there. Like I said, the state governments in the last 2 years have really pushed reforms and policies at that level where educational institutes are being incentivized to have incubation centers, to give out grants. So if you think about it, पहले एक central ministry से grant जा रही थी, अब हर एक state में उधर भी district level पे भी वो push कर रहे हैं कि आपका कुछ होना चाहिए startup initiative, what is your initiative, So when it's at that level, that's why you're seeing the results of it come through. So I think it's great, and honestly there has also been a parity in terms of communication. पहले network के issues होते थे, now you can work from anywhere.
5G is everywhere.
5G is everywhere. Basic convenience and standard of living is pretty much at the same place, right? Like you can still get a Zomato in a Jaipur, or even for that matter, even in sometimes in tier 3 cities you will have an Uber. So when all of those conveniences are there, people are building from there. Same people used to come and build in Delhi, Bangalore, अब they're like क्यों इतना expensive है, क्यों मैं build करूँ?
That's actually very true. And also, like, I was going through the Maharashtra state government budget, and they really emphasized on skill development, which I thought that was very interesting and necessary.
Yes, absolutely.
Even they were giving certain grants to women entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And I think state government also plays a very important role in what the central government does. So now I want to play this little this or that game with you, which I call Buzz or Biz, the policy showdown.
Nice.
So first is Bharat or India?
I think that's a given, Bharat.
When launching a new startup or a product in your startup, would you prioritize more on winning the early adopters, like Unplugged did, or the mass consumer base like Patanjali?
I wouldn't go with the example of Patanjali, but I would,
Of course,
considering today's time and whatever, but I would definitely say I will go for volume, so I would have gone for the mass. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Delhi summers or winters?
Delhi rains. I love the rain, so I'm loving the weather right now. Delhi rains, if I really had to choose, then maybe the winters.
Winters.
Yeah.
So now coffee with Karan or the Kapil Sharma show?
I'm bad. I don't watch enough entertainment. I would say working out. My choice. Neither.
Okay, so are you more passionate about Make in India or Digi India as an initiative?
I think definitely Make in India. Digi India is great and it provides the backbone, but really for the last end mile or the absolute end to build something, make in India, right? And by make in India, it could be everything from the tribal handicrafts that we have, getting them onto an international platform, to a manufacturing, to our own space tech. So yeah, make in India for sure.
So I also wanted to wrap up with this one question. What do you feel about the startup Mahakumbh that happened earlier this year? What do you feel that should there be more events like this?
Yeah, for sure. I think those events really help showcase how large the acceptability has become, how widespread it is. It also gives you a great platform to network. So Dubai has this very popular conference called GITEX.
GITEX.
GITEX. It's going to happen, I think, in September or October and or August, September.
This year.
But it's every year and it's massive. Anybody from the entire world comes there. And I think having the startup Mahakumbh, identifying it again with a very Bharat-centric brand is great, because it is the confluence where so many people can meet. You get to showcase, you get to meet investors and other founders. I think something that founders underplay or maybe discount is learning from other founders. आपको लग रहा है कि आपकी प्रॉब्लम है, बट वो किसी और की प्रॉब्लम हो चुकी है, जो शायद 2 महीने पहले they were in your shoes. So
learning from them.
Exactly. So just don't try to reach out to investors, try to reach out to other founders and be part of that community. So this community building activity gets a great representation through the event. So it's fantastic.
So thank you so much. I think
pleasure.
we've got some great examples, stories and insights by you, and I love this Bharatiya value that is in you. I just love it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, and I want to call you out. I think it's so lovely that you're doing this early on. This is, I know, what we were talking about off camera as well. To talk about being Indian or being a citizen of this country and understanding policies and understanding politics, because it defines to such a great extent whatever it is that we're doing. So kudos to you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.